When you need to find the fun in money, it's gaming. The Military Money Show is supported by Charles Schwab. Schwab can help you achieve better financial outcomes, saving for your future, putting your kids through college, being prepared for your retirement years. Schwab has the resources and solutions to help you. You can learn more at schwab.com. Hey, welcome to the Military Money Show, where I help the military community make, save, and invest money wisely. I'm your host, Lacey Langford, the military money expert. You need good money management and budgeting to build wealth, but that doesn't mean it has to be boring. Gamification is a unique way to manage money and have some fun. My guest, Brandon Childers, is a fellow veteran and an expert in gamified resource management and a dedicated advocate to the veteran community. He served in the Marines as a Huey Crew Chief for 5 years, including a deployment to Afghanistan. Since separating from service in 2015, he has used his GI Bill to earn a degree in applied psychology at the University of Southern California. Now he's using his unique perspective from his military experience and education to solve a problem that's central to veteran depression, homelessness, and suicide, and that's financial literacy. Brandon and I talk about gamification, what it is, how it's being used, and how it can help improve personal finance within the military community. I learned a lot talking with Brandon about gamification, how it's being used on social media, and the applications that can be used to help people with all aspects of life. Here is my chat with Brandon. Hey, Brandon, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Hi, Lacey. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk about this, although a little nervous because I feel like it's out of my wheelhouse. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that out. So I'm not intimidated by this conversation. But I think this is really important to have this discussion because, technology is always ever expanding and this is part of it. So I'm just going to start with, what the heck is gamification?
Well, gamification, simply put, is when a reward structure is incorporated to a normal everyday activity. We play lots of games. Some of them we know that we're playing, and others we engage in somewhat passively. So games we know that we're playing range from Angry Birds or Jenga, all the way through more complex games of strategy like chess or Risk that take a lot of attention. But when thinking about what gamification is, traffic lights can be a game. Toddlers can play red light, green light, racing to get to you, and they know the rules. You can only run when the green light's up, and if you run when the light's red, you have to go back to the starting point. Similarly, as drivers, there are rules. It makes a bit of a game out of a task that wouldn't normally be desirable. I want to go as fast as I can. Do you have in North Carolina, when you get onto a freeway, there'll be like a little red, green light to kind of limit how many people can get on the freeway at once?
No, we do not. Not that I know of.
Well, in the Bay Area and Los Angeles, just on an on-ramp, there's a stoplight to limit how many people. If a light turns green and 15 cars get on the freeway, that can cause a traffic jam on the freeway. But if you can trickle in 1 and 2 cars at a time, we don't think of this as gamification, but it's adding a process that makes everything go smoother on a bigger picture. And we don't realize that we're engaging in it. We just know that if I run the light, I get the ticket. There's other good examples of gamification on the road, especially musical speed bumps. Have you ever heard of musical speed bumps? I think
no,
they're big.
I feel like this is all like California stuff.
That's fair. I've never seen the musical speed bumps myself. I think in Germany is where I learned of it first. Little tiny grooves cut in the road, and if you go the correct speed limit, it'll play a song. But if you go too fast, it kind of rumbles your car. It doesn't sound good. I mean, a speed bump, even non-musical, that's shifting a behavior. There's no points to it. It's not fun, but gamification is often used to teach. Monopoly was developed by a woman after the Great Depression to teach her children money management and how, at the time, the utility companies can take advantage if you aren't in tune to what's happening.
So it's making a game to change behavior, to maybe make you take some action. Because like you're saying, if you are playing a game that you know you're playing, like chess, and you have to be very present and thoughtful about your moves versus gamification, there's no beginning and end, right? If you're playing a game consciously, you know there's an end to it, or you're going to finish the game. Versus gamification, I don't know, it seems like there's no end to the game and you're trying to get somebody to do something.
This is a great point. There are two types of games in this aspect. Limited games that we know end. If we're playing checkers against each other, we know when somebody has won. The game's over and then we can move on to whatever's next. But then there's these unlimited games that have no end in sight, and global relations and how countries get along with each other is a bit of an unlimited game. You know, there's, in the range of complexity from Jenga to chess, both of those games end. But, you know, if my wife and I keep track of, you know, who does the dishes, hey, you did the dishes, so I'll take out the trash. It's not a point structure, but there's a tit for tat. There's this for that. There's anything you could add points to. So the distinction between what a game is and what gamification is a bit more, the game has a name. The gamification is the process that we use to come up with the game. And it, again, often drives more desirable behaviors.
I think that was a good explanation, that the game has a name and that the gamification is the behavior part. We talked about recently, we were just on Clubhouse. We're both new to Clubhouse. We were testing that out and having a discussion over there. And I mentioned I'd done a little research and that social media has gamification in it, which it never even registered to me until I read this article that likes is a social way of doing gamification. But you mentioned, and I want you to explain this to everybody because I feel like this was an aha moment for me, and maybe the rest of you got it, but I did not. Please explain the slot machine, how it's applied to social media.
Certainly. So the slot machine, now you press a button, but you used to pull a lever. You'd put in a quarter and pull a lever, and the wheels would spin, and you hope to get a combination that gives you money. Cherries, diamonds, what have you. More often than not, they don't match and you don't get anything. But it makes a fun noise. There's a bell, there's a whistle, there's a free cocktail.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. So similarly, when we engage in Instagram or Facebook or most social sites, you know, you'll hit a point where you're bored, you know, and then you go back to the top of your feed and you plunge and you never know what's going to come up. It could be a friend that's having a baby. That's a jackpot. That's awesome. It's exciting. Or it could be the same person you always see posting a picture of their lunch again. That's a penny.
Yeah,
Roll again.
Yeah.
And again, there are games that we are aware that we're playing, and there's games that we're not aware that we're playing. But the people that make the games, in this instance, definitely know we're playing. That's coming to light. When I first started on Instagram, I was very wary. I was cautious to what's taking place. I didn't want to like things. It's public. I don't want necessarily everybody to know what I like and what I don't like. Not to mention the database that it's building for whoever has it. Now, you know, when you get a little more immersed in it, maybe it's a Friday night and you're on your 9th month of quarantine, you had a couple glasses of wine, and then you're much more loose with your likes. Same way it happens in a casino. There's no clock, the windows are tinted, not intended for you to know what time it is and to be aware of your actions. The drinks are free, just keep playing.
Yeah. Really, that's just so many things have clicked since you've told me this. I feel like my eyes have opened to the world. But I'm totally guilty of that. And I want to say that I just did this to my husband last night, that I didn't realize, you know, I am waiting. Like, I'm doing that poll. I'm doing the refresh on Instagram. But then there's this other component is to expose you to new things, like the search stuff. And that's just like randomness. And I think there really is like some big giant head that is, I don't know how they're doing this algorithm. But I was just talking with my hairdresser last week, and I was like, I don't know why Instagram thinks I want a baby. Like, it just keeps showing me like all of these like new babies or new moms. And I was like, what did I click on to make them think this? So it's like, I can't get it out of my feed. And I feel like if I slow down while I'm scrolling, it will give them some indication like I'm still interested in that and whatever reason. And so I keep like going fast through my scroll because I'm like, I don't want to even pause for a second. So they think that Lacey wants a baby, which is not the case, everyone.
That's, well, hopefully your algorithm heard you say that.
I know. It's a very good point. It probably did.
But it's a great point. How hypersensitive do we have to be to our every little action and how long I spend looking at something because the algorithm might think that I want something that who knows? Who knows? Figuring out what a defense mechanism was and what a projection is and all of these human interactions that are really difficult in one-on-one communication have really been amplified by this little echo chamber we all carry now. There are definite potentials for advantage, but right now we're in a hairy spot. Everybody's very reliant on Instagram and Facebook and our social platforms. We're users. You only call your customers users in tech and in drugs.
Oh my gosh, I never even thought of that. That is so true. I don't want to be a user, Brandon. I don't want to be a user.
And none of us do, and it ties back to how aware we want to be of the game that we're playing. It's fun to be immersed. It's fun to not consider our actions. And it's fun to just be in the casino and not know what time it is, to be using. There are clear advantages to being aware and being in control. It's not as much fun. You've got to be able to cut loose and go be unaware and disengage. But I think that that's a much healthier process after you have control and you're aware. Okay, I'm going to the casino tonight. I'm going to set my alarm in my pocket. It'll vibrate. The ringer's off, but I know that I'm going to leave at 10 o'clock. I'm giving myself $100 to lose. I'm going to go have the time of my life. That's important. It's good to be able to cut off. Go to the river. Take a book. Disconnect from whatever it is that keeps our minds busy. But when that becomes the habit, the practice, when it goes from just scrolling through on the toilet to on the couch in front of the TV with a tablet and your laptop, and it's immersive and it's not always intentional.
Well, let's talk about how psychology plays into all of this, into teaching others about financial management. And also, too, maybe if you could touch on what made you kind of get into this field, because it's not even something that I was really aware of, and I feel like it's new and up and coming.
Certainly. Well, I have a couple psych theories I'm really excited to share. But as far as how I got into it, I got out of the Marines in 2015. I was a Huey door gunner and helicopter crew chief. But I got out in 2015. I had 0 college credits. Like a lot of vets, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. So I went to the local community college, Cerritos College. And I was very fortunate to get a great academic counselor, and I was going to study business. Just, what do I do with my GI Bill? I guess I'll go study business. I enjoyed learning about business, but it got repetitive and monotonous really quick. Counting wasn't for me. But I had a job at the VRC as an English tutor that kind of evolved into more of a just resource manager and people listener. People would come in with a problem, and it was my job to know not the answer, but where to send them for the answer. There's a huge need for this in the veteran community. There are so many resources for veterans and so many veterans that need those resources, but a huge disconnect between the people that need the help and the help. Now, how this ties to psychology. I switched my major to study psychology as I got into people more than the numbers that they study. I started to learn the theories. Right off the bat, choice overload. If you're a veteran seeking mental health care, for an easy one, where do you start? Where do you begin? You go on the internet and type in veteran mental health. You could go to the VA. You could ask a friend. You could go to the VFW. You could go to the American Legion.
Nonprofits. There's a ton of them.
There's so many, and it's awesome. There's so much help. But we don't want to have this dime a dozen feel to things in this realm. We want to be able to. I need help. I need to call Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
You gotta.
Well, that's like picking a mutual fund or an index fund. It's choice overload. I think that's what's awesome about the thrift savings plan is the choices are more limited. They're all still really good choices, but you don't have this overload versus if you went to your bank and set up an IRA and you look at all the options for index funds. It's like, ooh, I'm just going to come back to this later. Like that's what ends up happening is you walk away instead of making the decision.
Exactly. That's a great example of the TSP. It encourages a lot of 18-year-old, junior enlisted folks that would normally not start a retirement account. But if you pose them with a yes or a no, oh, well, yes seems better. So back into the social media thing, choice architecture is another psych principle. Opting in versus opting out, the TSP. When you go through boot camp and they say, this is the TSP, do you want it or do you not want it? Well, they're posing you with an opt-out situation. Like the default is we're going to put you into this program. You have to say, no, I don't want that.
What is that one called again?
Choice architecture.
Yeah. And they changed that now because that must be that's clearly a problem. Like all of these things that you're talking about, I think really apply to the military community as it relates to money, like dead on, because now with the new blended retirement system, you're in it. When you come in, you're in it. You actually have to opt out. Before you had to say, I want in. Now you have to say, I want out.
Exactly. And you can think about kids. I think it's so easy to talk about these things in regards to kids. My daughter's name's Layla. Hey, Layla, do you want an ice cream before bed? That's an opt-in. She hadn't been thinking about ice cream before I offered it to her. Now I better have some ice cream to offer her. She's thinking about it.
Now I want ice cream. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Versus an opt-out, I could say, Layla, if you clean your room, then you don't have to go to bed for another hour. That's a terrible example. But an opt-out, we see it on the internet all the time now. We've updated our privacy policy. Now you have to, none of us read that fine print. It has a huge effect on cookies, for example. What little snippets of data are being held to determine what will be presented to us as users with opt-ins versus opt-outs. As a choice architecture, when you're building something, you're looking at defaults. As a default, I want people to be this way. They're going to have to choose if they want to be different.
Yeah, that's like newsletters. You have to actually unclick it or you're going to be signed up for their newsletter.
Right. So no, I think awareness is huge. Are we aware of the advertisements being put in front of us? Things happen in your circle that you love to see. And then something, I didn't want a jacket. I have a jacket. Why are you trying to sell me a jacket? Now I want a jacket. Dang. Well,
Yeah. I probably showed my husband a picture of a cute baby on Instagram and said, hey, look at this cute baby. And then that's when it's like, boom, Lacey wants a baby.
Off and running.
Yep.
So choice overload is a huge problem. What I noticed, what brought me to finance from psychology, I suppose, is the exponential growth bias. And this one I'm really excited to talk about. Exponential growth bias is the tendency to underestimate exponential growth. Humans, we as people, aren't great with big numbers. We naturally think linearly until we train ourselves not to. If I offered you $1 million right now or a dollar that doubled every day for a month, which would you choose?
I want the money now.
You want the money now. And in finance, this is a Nash equilibrium, which we can come back and talk about. Take the lump sum. You want the money now. You want the money now. But if you took the magic doubling dollar, at the end of a month, it's worth over $1 billion because of the way that it doubles and compounds. And if you knew that answer, I appreciate you playing along. But 80% of people, particularly people that don't, run podcasts in the finance realm, aren't in tune to how money grows over time. And you just naturally think, $1, $2, $4. Yeah, I'll take the $1 million. If you're trained to think into day 28, 29, 30, when the really big doubles hit, you understand how exponential growth occurs. And this ability predicts poverty. You understand how your interest rates are going to affect you, both in savings and in debt. You're more likely to understand how to position yourself to succeed versus if you have this linear approach, you're not going to recognize the time value of money in your savings potential. But more importantly, you're not going to understand what your debt is doing to you each day. And I don't need to upsell the stress of debt. It's there and people are aware of it. What I do need to upsell is how we can take these principles that have been used kind of for bad purposes in social media and flip them on their head, make people aware to the game that they're playing, and assign some point structures to these stressful topics to shift the behavior in the direction we want it to. I want to touch on financial abstraction as well, which is another psych principle that definitely belongs in this conversation. When I took econ in high school, we learned about the white envelope method. Warren Buffett's pay yourself first, and you got $50 in your envelope to get you through the week. We don't use cash anymore. We were already switching to cards prior to COVID. Now everything is run through a little plastic card, and this causes what's called financial abstraction. We don't know how to think about our money and how much of it we have. We don't see a physical entity leaving our wallet. We just swipe a card. So when you put all these things together, it makes a very confused spender who's not thinking about purchases on the hour-to-hour or day-to-day basis, how we live. If I ask people how much they make in a year or how much they make in a month, they always know the answer to this. But if I ask you, how much do you spend on food in a day? They'd ballpark based on, restaurants or deliveries or what have you. But if you ask people about their subscriptions, like your monthly subscription services, what do you pay for? The more time you give them to think about the answer, the bigger the number gets. Off the bat, you want to say 12, 15 bucks. Oh, well then, Netflix, Hulu, and this, that. Oh, my gym membership. Oh, wow, I'm paying $300 a month off the get-go, and I'm not even thinking about it because of automation. To recap, exponential growth bias is not being able to understand how money grows over time, exponential versus linear. Financial abstraction is just living in the blur of card swiping and not ever seeing a physical entity leave your possession. And choice overload. What am I spending my money on? How do I save my money? How do I do anything? My phone's buzzing. People are calling me. This isn't how we were designed to live. And every day that goes by, a new app gets added that takes a little bit more of our attention share and makes it harder to stay focused on whatever it is you want to be focused on.
Do you think that gamification, as it relates to personal finance, makes it easier or makes it more fun? Why should companies or people be using gamification? Does it really work? Does it really change behavior? Because I think that's when it comes to like me as a financial coach, trying to tell somebody, hey, you need to be investing in your TSP. You need to be saving for emergencies. Me telling you those things that you should do, and even if that's the goal of the app or whatever they're using, but does that really work? Does it make them change their attitude and maybe be more confident with money or happier?
Done correctly, I believe so. In the same way, back to kids, if I want my daughter to clean up her toys before bed, she doesn't want to, and I don't want to, then we're stuck with a task we don't want to do. But if I say, hey, if you can pick up more clothes than me, or if you can pick up more toys than me, then I'll let you stay up for 5 more minutes. Well, now we're competing to finish the task that we originally didn't want to do. With your clients, what would you say is the biggest factor that determines whether or not they're successful? As a coach, is there a single factor that determines whether or not your client is going to be helped by you?
I feel like that they're mentally ready, like for whatever reason that is, that they're willing to make change, that, it's gotten so darn bad that they're willing to make change, or they are just really at a spot where they want something better.
And that's, I would agree, a huge driving factor. You can drag a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. In the veteran advocacy community, as a mental health expert, as financial coaches, you want to be able to help everybody that wants your help. I think I want to help everybody, but not everybody wants your help. If you can identify the people that are ready for the help, that want the help, that need the help, well, now that's great. That's good to identify, but we still have a problem. It's not clear cut. Just because you want to get something done doesn't mean you're going to be able to. Now we need tools. We have people seeking something. Now what are we going to give them to achieve? There's a lot of great finance apps, and I think gamification is being slowly incorporated, but I think there's a lot more potential.
Yeah, I think the example that you mentioned with your daughter in the game, to pick up toys, that also starts to, I don't know, maybe shift mindset in other aspects to say, next time I have to pick up toys, oh, it was fun last time I did it because we played this game. I'm not playing the game this time, but I still can hustle up and get it done. Or so you can apply, I think, that gamification to other aspects or maybe repetitive behavior to say, okay, maybe next time I don't necessarily need the game. So to me, that's almost if you're using an app and you've developed this good behavior, you might not need the app. What are some examples of apps that people would use that have gamification? Just so we're all know what we're talking about.
Certainly. The best example in this space right now, I think, is Noom, who's using gamification or what we might call quizology in physical fitness. So if I want to lose weight, if I want to get healthy in general, I would go to Noom, and right off the bat, they'll ask me, are you here to lose weight or to build muscle? And I select one. And then it says, well, how tall are you? How old are you? How much do you weigh? Are you active throughout the day? Now, it's collecting information on me. It's seeing what my goals are, what my kind of starting point is, and then taking the information I gave it, using nothing more than an algorithm, it outputs, hey, men in their late 20s who weigh X amount and want to this and that should be doing X, Y, and Z. So they've personalized my situation and giving me a roadmap to success and incentivizing it. Now, Noom says that the biggest factor that determines their client success is the nightly check-ins. If you check in and say how many calories you consumed for that day, that's the number one biggest predictor in sustained weight loss. So now let's go back to finance. How often are people thinking about their money? How often are they balancing their checkbooks? In research I've conducted, I've asked about 50 junior Marines how often they're thinking about money, and they say most of them are thinking about it once to twice a month.
On payday.
Exactly, the 1st and the 15th.
Yes, I was like, I knew it. You didn't even have to tell me that one.
So, if I could put my psych hat back on, this is reinforcement schedules. If you take a lab rat and feed them every 5 minutes, or every 10 minutes, or every 1st and the 15th of the month, they're going to get very comfortable because they know that that food pellet is coming. But what else is going to happen? They get really scrawny and tired in the off days.
Talking about all of this gamification stuff has really got my mind just wondering. One, probably this is how you've already thought, is just so many opportunities when you think about how these things could be applied, and just things that I've seen online and not realizing it's gamification. Like you see on some places, if you purchase something, it will say somebody purchased something or somebody made a donation. And so it's like this FOMO. If you're not donating, then you're not part of the group. I think, what is it, those giving sites, GoFundMe, they do that type of thing too. So there's all these applications that are already using it. But I'm thinking with celebrities, you know how they do you can hire a celebrity to do a message for you, Cameo. They should do that with gamification. If it was like, you saved $1,000, you built up your emergency fund, and your favorite celebrity is going to, give you a message, a little video. I feel like there's huge applications for that.
That's a great idea. And I mean, it's fun to think about what would be rewarding. It's hard that the money itself isn't always a good enough incentive for a client, right? If you do everything I say, then you'll get to retire and live financially free. And that, to me, sounds awesome. But it doesn't drive everybody.
Jason Momoa would help drive a lot of people if he was given messages.
At the end of it, you have a built savings, paid down debt, and this little extra reward, whether it's a gift card or a cameo from your favorite person. But one of the points I wanted to get to is everything in our society is punishment-oriented. If you don't do this, you can get incarcerated here. You'll go to jail for doing certain things. On the other end of the spectrum, there are not these huge rewards just for doing what's right. We're expected to do what's right. And I mean, that's the narrative. You should do what's right. But over time, just looking at human behavior, why would somebody choose to do what's right versus what's easy? And the bigger group of people you have, the more haywire that gets. But people will engage with an application. People will play with their phone all day. What if we built these reward structures into the process? You set a goal for yourself, whatever it looks like. Maybe it's to spend less time on your phone. Maybe it's to save more money. But if you can gamify a process that's difficult behaviors to engage in, exercise, saving money, stopping smoking, cell phone usage, by adding a point system and make it fun. Yeah, people want to have fun. We always opt for fun over misery. Let's work with that.
Yeah. I'm more of the fun person, so I think it would be cool if you got funny messages or funny badges, things like that when you do well with your money. But I think you're right that there's a lot of times when it comes to money, we focus on the bad stuff, especially in the military community. Like, oh, you're a young Joe. We know you're spending your money on this, and you're getting yourself a jacked up truck. And instead of saying, hey, there's actually an 18-year-old that has $100,000 in their checking account. Like, this is somebody that we should be focusing on. Like, how can we replicate this behavior? And kudos to this person. And, that also gives other people inspiration, I think, is part of improving your finances, to say, hey, this is a good way to live your life, to have this kind of freedom and things like that. So I totally agree with looking for the positive.
It's very hard to help somebody from a position of needing help yourself. You have to have your own life mask on before you're able to help somebody else with theirs. This is true with finance too. A lot of the social problems that we're looking at come from misunderstood resource management, exponential growth bias, and not understanding how these problems are going to grow over time, and not being in a position to make the change that we want to. So I think if we can improve financial literacy using gamification, it will put good-hearted people that want to make change into a position to be able to, just by simply teaching them what they already wanted to learn in a way that's more effective.
I love it. I think that's a really good way to kind of put a nice bow on gamification, that it really is a tool that could be used to further help people. Well, I want to ask you a couple of quick random questions that I ask everybody. What is one resource or tool that makes your life easier that you use?
Well, besides my Leatherman, which is my go-to answer.
That really can be used for everything. I do find I'm like all the time to my husband, I'm like, do you have a knife? Do you have your Leatherman? Do you?
Anything you can use Leatherman for. And if you can't use a Leatherman, I would recommend getting really good with Excel, which it almost feels like a cop-out answer. But that thing is a crystal ball. You can determine the future if you can learn how to punch a couple functions into Excel. And I wish I would have gotten better with it earlier.
Yeah, that is a good one. What is your favorite book right now, or your favorite book of all time?
Of all time, I would say Walden 2 by B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner is a famous behaviorist and psychologist. He taught pigeons how to fly missiles during World War II effectively using, drumroll, gamification. So this book revolves around how to use positive reinforcements to build a society that works for everybody rather than threatening with punishments, creating a society that only works for some. It's also oriented around getting out of the military and being pushed towards, helping society. But the only option to do that is to get into politics, which is generally ineffective at making true change, because it's not scientific. We need to be able to experiment and iterate and say, this was wrong, we need to do this now, which is something not found in that realm. My favorite book right now is Budgeting 101. The only reason I bring it up is because I just read this yesterday and wanted to share. A bougette was a small leather bag. I forget what year. Maybe, let's say the 1800s in France. And they called the small leather bag a bougette. And it's where they kept their money. And over time, it developed into the budget, which was a word used for the money inside the bag, not the bag itself. So just to tie that back to now, cash is becoming more and more obsolete. Carrying a wallet. I don't take my sweatpants off often. So to think about the physical money inside of my physical bougette or wallet or whatever, as that goes away, it gets really hard to keep a mental tie to how many resources I have available and how to use them over time.
I've never heard of that before. That's really cool. Well, I'll be sure to put links to all of that stuff in the show notes. Now it is time for my favorite part of the podcast, which is game time. And today I'm doing it again. We're going to be playing Pod Deck, which was a gift from my editor, Steve, and I love it. So I'm going to give you 3 cards that I've randomly drawn out of the deck, and I'm going to read them to you, and you're just going to have to give us your response. That's the game. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. First one. If you were reincarnated as a famous landmark, which would it be? I thought this was a good one.
It is a good one. I just relocated to the Bay Area, but I think I want to say the Golden Gate Bridge.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I love the San Francisco Bay. I love the ocean. It's a good view. Great view from the San Francisco Bridge.
When I read this card, I thought I would be Mount Rushmore. Just in case anybody wants to know what landmark I would be reincarnated as.
Would you be the mountain itself, or would you be a face on it?
I would just be all the faces.
Okay.
I'm just watching everyone. So, okay, next card. Who or where would you haunt if you were a ghost? This one's an awesome one.
Yeah.
I tell my husband all the time I will haunt him.
The halls of my high school.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. How much would someone have to pay you to eat a live spider? Not a dead spider. The card says a live spider.
Oh, that was my first job. I took entomology in high school, and I think probably the most I ever got was $10 for it was like a snail or something. But yeah, I'd get I ate some bugs back in my day. That's not a bragging point. It's just who I am.
Just as a fact, it's part of who you are. It's in your DNA at this point.
Today,
for real.
Now that I'm a professional, I would go $20. $20 is a strict cutoff.
It's inflation. It's inflation. Well, I appreciate you being on the show to talk about gamification and for playing the game and being such a sport and hanging out with me on Clubhouse. Can you tell everybody listening where they can learn more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Brandon Childers, and I'm building a website called freelancecorporal.com, and we can be found at freelcpl on most social media sites. And yeah, I'm really trying to help make finances fun for junior enlisted. I'd love anybody that wants to reach out to help. I'm all ears.
Wonderful. Well, I'll be sure to put links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to Brandon for coming on the show to talk about gamification. And thank you to Charles Schwab for the work they do to help the military community achieve better financial outcomes and for supporting the Military Money Show. You can learn more at schwab.com. You can also head over to lacylangford.com to get all the show notes and resources from this episode. I appreciate you listening, and I will talk to you next week.